Welcome to the Six-Figure Author Experiment, where we help you break through your first or next $100,000 goal. Parental discretion is advised. Now, let's get on with the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first monthly call of 2025. Monica, it's nice to see you.
Hello. I'll see you in a couple days in person. So.
And we just hung out like all day, like 2 days ago. So
yes, we've been on lots of calls for our conference.
And I'm very excited to welcome Lee Savino, my co-host for the Six-Figure Author Experiment. Hi, Lee.
Hi. So glad to be here.
I am very excited also to welcome our guest this month, which is Ines Johnson, one of my favorite humans, and has a Kickstarter that just is blowing up. And I'll let her introduce herself.
Hey guys, what's up? I'm Ines. Like I said, I write kissing books, and I have a Kickstarter that's blowing up. And it's all Russell's fault. I can take no credit. It's Russell. He did it.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to deny that.
Seriously, Russell and I were on a beach last September at Nink, and this was going to be a nonfiction book. And he's like, "You're going to Kickstart it, right?" It's like, "No, Russell, you know, I had a bad experience. The first time I did a Kickstarter, I don't want to go through it." He's like, "You're going to Kickstart it, right?" And then he proceeded to tell me exactly what to do, and I did exactly what he told me to do.
Like $24,000 in the first 2 days, right? Like, why?
It is about to break 30,000.
Check it out.
Like, less than $600 away from 30,000.
Wait, go plan.
So if you want to
I'm going to. Well, what's great about this book is like I've heard Ines talk about this topic a lot. Wait, are we looking at the book? Do you see the book page? All right.
Yep.
There's one backer from 400, $600 from 30,000, and this is like a thing that I've heard Ines talk about so much, and she is like so good about it. She's so detailed, and her Substack, Ines Johnson, is having a great name and just overall. And so I love it, and I know you talk about you can talk about this topic forever.
I can. And sometimes people let me, which is the best part, because, you know, just talking to yourself in your office or while you're sitting on your couch, it's okay. But when people are listening and they're learning, one of my favorite things to do is to be helpful. I get so excited when I help someone. Especially if I'm helping them with something that I like to do. Like if you want help cleaning or moving, but if you want to talk story and I can help you with your story, that's so exciting for me. But the page turner pacing came about because I'm trained as a screenwriter. And in screenwriting, I worked in television. I went to Howard University, School of Communications, and the School of C had radio, television, and film. And they were all right next to each other. So we all took classes together. So even though I was a television student, I was learning film, I was learning radio. So I had all this stuff in my head. And years later, when I decided to write my first romance novel, I knew plotting from screenwriting. And it was really interesting to me because plot was always a noun. Like you weren't a plotter, like that wasn't a thing. And you definitely weren't a pantser. That wasn't a thing because structure was just drilled into our heads. And so when I came onto the scene and people were like, "Are you a plotter or you're a pantser?" It was like the initiation question. Are you a plotter or you're a pantser? And I was like, why are you talking about my pants? What's going on here? But that's what I understood was how to structure screen time basically. And not only that, but television is a unique medium that we have a lot of interruptions and we had to learn how to deal with interruptions. People have that remote in their hand, they can turn the channel. How do you stop that? There is a commercial break, 6 to 8 commercial breaks that happen while the story is being told. How do you handle that? There's a 7-day gap in between stories, like months between seasons. How do you handle that? And we were taught very specific things on how to handle these. And I was just thinking, oh, a commercial break is just like a chapter break. Let me use the tools that I learned back in television and just put them at the end of my chapter to make them turn the page and never stop until they get to the end of the book. And then, because I learned episodic television, I wasn't in film school where a lot of times it's one or a trilogy. Then we learn these techniques on how to plant seeds to get them to tune in next week, and then next week, and then next week. And so I'm not saying it came naturally. I'm saying I was trained. But as I'm having these conversations with other novelists, they're like looking at me like, what the bleep are you talking about? And this is what I was talking about, what I put in this book, Patient or Pacing. I put all that stuff in there to help. And I put a lot of it on Substack because I didn't put it all in there because I couldn't fit it all in there. So a lot of it is on Substack for free because I'm just telling people, oh, this is how I do this. Oh, this is how I do that. And that is the story of Patient or Pacing.
Yeah, it's so interesting to talk with you because I'm like, obviously all these, because like I also started in movies and TV and like directed TV and wrote like web series and stuff, and I'm like, well, yeah, like a chapter has to end in a specific way to like get you to do the next thing. Like, why do you think Game of Thrones is 45 minutes of boring and 5 minutes of like real interesting stuff at the end of each one, and then like real boring for like 5 episodes, and then like hits it like on episode 8, so you keep coming back every single time.
You're being manipulated.
Yeah.
Purposefully, people.
And we're like, and like audiences like love that. Like that's what they're coming for. Like they're coming to have those like moments and to have that pulled through. I do a lot of work with like nonfiction and fiction people, and people are like, well, it's easy to have a value proposition in nonfiction. I was like, bullshit is way easier to have a value proposition in fiction because like all people want to do is stop thinking about their lives for like 5 seconds. Yeah.
But that's the interesting thing, Russell, because I feel like as genre fiction authors, we get a lot of vitriol about, oh, but it's going to be formulaic. Yeah, we figured out the formula. Oh, and then the special sauce, just like everybody knows most people know how to make like a macaroni and cheese, but when you put your special sauce in it, and I'm convinced that different pots and different pans from different families are seasoned differently, but when you bring that to the table, that's when the formula becomes different, because my macaroni and cheese is not going to taste like Lee's, it's not going to taste like Monica's, it's not going to taste like Russell's, because you are the special ingredient in the formula.
Yeah, absolutely. And the stuff that you like keep coming back to, right? Mm-hmm. It's like you wrote about the like little subgenres of like that you chose, and then that the ones that you didn't even choose, the ones that just were your preferences that just you kind of couldn't. Some of them you could choose, and some of them were just like, these are the things I like. I don't know, like I love you to talk about that, and then I want to stop talking and have Lee and Monica say words, because like I could talk to you forever.
Thank you, because I could talk to you. We had a very lovely chat on the beach. I highly recommend chatting with Russell on the beach. But yeah, today on Facebook as well as on Substack, I put up a post where I was talking about the market. There's all this talk about, should you write to market? Should you not write to market? And I was like, wait a second, guys. What are we talking about when we say the market? Because in my mind, it's of two things. There's what I call the fertile ground. Like you don't want to start shouting in a place where nobody is. And what I mean when I say that is, look at the bestsellers list, because that tells you where people are. And most of the times people are on the romance market and the mysteries market and in the thriller market. That's where the biggest market is. If you were like me as a baby author and you wrote a male female romance that was dystopian and it was set in a library and there was a bit of magical realism to it, there's no subgenre. There's no market for that, except for maybe an erotic romance. It was very, very small. And so I was saying how I barely made $100 a month actively pushing those books, because there was nobody there to read it. There was no one listening in that desert of a market. Nobody was there. So the market is, where are the people? But then the market is also, what do they want? And are you giving them what they want? Because another thing that I put in that article was that I found a market. I had a really good friend who had thousands and thousands of active people on her blog. And I was like, can I post about my book, my male, female dystopian book that also has magical realism? Can I post in there? And she was like, okay, sure. And I posted, and I didn't get a single sale because it was the wrong market. She was talking about, it was a finance blog that was geared towards Black women. And I came on talking about my male, female romance that was dystopian. and nobody was interested. So there's the marketplace where the people are, and then there's also the do you have what they want to buy? If you're going to try to force them to buy something that they don't want, they're not going to listen to you. They're going to walk away. So I think it's these two things together. And when you can find that overlap, that is gold.
Such a desert thing to say.
Shut up, Russell.
I have a follow-up question. Go, Russell, you finish.
No,
but I
said
think the same thing. Yeah. I have a follow-up question related to this is such a desert thing to say. I mean, so, I love the idea of page turner pacing. Does it work on weird books? Like, that's what we're known for, is like, write the book of your little heart desires. Can you drop these ideas and tactics into that type of book to make it more marketable?
I think you have to first find the market. So like with that weird male, female dystopian book, I found a very small market on the erotic romance where it was bisexual romance. So I could market to that small pocket, but I couldn't, but it took me a while to realize is that going into that small pocket, I was not going to become a millionaire. I could comfortably make maybe a couple $100 a month, pushing it to that market. So if you're going to write weird, which is amazing because we need weird books, just understand that that might not be the market where Onyx Storm has taken over like the first 3 to 4 top spots on the bestsellers list. Like you're not going to hit those people. They're not listening to you.
I have something to add as somebody who is more of a pantser and has a little bit more of a squirrely process. Tropes are a shared language.
Mm-hmm.
Go to France and I say, I'm American. I'm not a cliche. It's just it's like, it's identifying something that we all understand. Oh, she's from America. So I say, this is a dystopian, setting or dystopian novel. You're just tapping into a shared language. It's a marketing language, and you can bake that marketing into your book. And the more you do that, the easier it will be to tell people about the book. But as someone who does not write to trend, who has to figure out like why this story would be important to me, why it would be interesting for me to write. But I also try to figure out a little bit like, can I use the word romanticy? Because that is hot right now. Or like you were like, could I go the dystopian? No, it's actually better for me to go for like the erotic and the bisexual romance. Mm-hmm. You were just trying to figure out the shared language. And when you do that before you write the book, it is easier.
Ideally, yes.
And it's not impossible to do after.
True.
Often it's kind of, you're stumbling around and doing that sort of like, is it werewolves? Is it Viking? Which is the bigger, word I can use that will attract more people. But as I've matured as someone writing to market, it really does become of like, I have all these ideas and how do I, first of all, I'm condensing them into a romance form. So I'm already adding constraints, but there's immense freedom in constraints. So that constraints actually can fuel creativity. And that's kind of how I would choose to look at it. As someone, again, I have to have my whole heart involved in this. So I'm like, well, if I add in, there has to be a happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
I do want some suspense and thriller subplots because that's going to be fun and interesting layer for me to add. But let me at least nail down one trope and I do it. I do only one bed and I really do it. And how can I do that in a way that's satisfying? Or I do arranged marriage and I've tried to do arranged marriage and it's always a mess. It's me subverting the trope versus actually doing the trope. But one of these days I will do it. And that will be my most popular book. And then it'll get everyone else into the squirrely catalog. But I'm just throwing that out there because I want to think like you and I do not.
That's not true, Lee. I have plotted and written with you. So I know that I will let you call yourself a pantser, but in my mind, I'm going to call you a liar. Because you just set down all that structure right there. That was nothing but structure that's coming out of your mouth. You don't have to call yourself a plotter because like the same way, like I know you're right. I'm picking that trope. I'm picking that structure. I know I need that beat. And I don't necessarily write an outline, but I
Yeah.
know that it needs to be in there. And I think that that's what's important, not this this plotter versus pantser discussion. How does that make us better? How does that make us win? The structure, everything that you just said right there, that's what makes you win. Knowing
And whether
structure,
you
putting it in there.
an Excel spreadsheet with
You don't
percentages
need to. You
or
don't need to.
tent poles, which is kind of how someone described how I write. Scene to scene to scene to scene. And in the middle, I get to wander around. That's fun for me.
Well, Lee, could you also talk for a second about, like, you told the story about like squirrel shifters and how like you really wanted to make like a squirrel shifter book, and you're like, maybe book 20 though is squirrel shifters, and like how you think about that thing as well, because I think it's really instructive as to like how you can still write really weird eventually.
Yeah, I definitely am like, you want to do the weird things, have it be a subplot, have it be book 15, have it be an extra bonus novella or a holiday novella. And I get to write the skunk shifter and the owl shifter go on a road trip for Christmas. Like, and my fans it's someone who's read the whole series will understand the book. And it's not something I hold up as like, this is your entry point. Elena Johnson talks about when it comes to marketing, donkeys and unicorns. Unicorn books are just like crazy selling. They hit the trope, they hit the trend, right time in the market. You know, Sarah J. Maas paved the way in romantasy, and you wrote a romantasy, and now, you know, it's huge. That's a unicorn book. Your workhorses are the ones that just sell, usually first in series, and then the donkeys, and the squirrel shifter is the donkey.
You know, but I also think you're speaking to something really specific, which is like you have books that are to grow your audience, and then you have books that are to satisfy your fans, and both of those are extremely important marketing activities or sales activities. You've really got to think about, you know, how do I attract casual readers? How do I retain readers and and like how do I turn them into fans and evangelists? And I think if you can at least break your sales funnel or reader journey up into those three pieces, with how you're writing. So I'd love to hear, like, Ines, how do you, like, because I mean this book, does it like, can it like be applied to like those different needs, I guess, within your catalog?
It can. You just need to, one, be honest with yourself. Like, again, when I wrote my first book, I still had a day job. And so I didn't need it to take care of me. I wanted to get it in people's hands. And if that is my goal, your goal was to hit New York Times with a squirrel book, that's a tall order, and it's an unlikely tall order. So you have to be honest with yourself about at least if not with yourself, be honest with the book, what you want it to do. And if you're asking that book to do something that you are not positioning it to do, that's not fair.
Yeah. I do want to, I think it's also instructive to just talk about like your book versus the book we have on Kickstarter now, because it kind of goes about this trend where it's like your book is going to hit like 50,000. Every writer of every genre, like of every size, like is of the market to like make a book that turns more pages. It's like a very, very marketable book. Our direct sales accelerator book, to direct sales for authors book, it's like it made $30,000, because like if you want direct sales, you are going to buy our book. Why would you not buy our book? So like it's a smaller audience, but like still a pretty big audience. Then we have like, this is our current book. Do you know how deep into a catalog you have to be to care about our author ecosystems? It's like you have to know who we are. You have to want an archetyping system. You have to like think that we have a good archetyping system. You have to like be already probably doing direct sales. Like it is probably already know like some combination of Clifton Strengths, Enneagrams, human design, and disc to like even be in this method. And so like, even though this book was marketed to the exact same humans as bought our Substack book, as bought our 8333 book, as bought our direct sales accelerator book, like it's just, you need to be a Monica and Russell fan on some level to even know that this architecture exists. And if you say author ecosystems to somebody outside of maybe even this call, they'd be like, I don't care. Like, what is that? You have the more you have to explain the thing as opposed to like pacing. Cool, I'm in. Like, oh, direct sales, I'm in. Kickstarter, I'm in. Substack, I'm in. Like the easier that it makes you make that for someone to immediately like click in, the more potential market you have. But often those very big, I got you, Lee, in a second. But often those books that are like, when you release a bunch of stuff, like it's not all going to be like top of market. You need to be like, this is what you read when you're read in. Lee, you had something to say.
Well, it ties into what you're saying, but I wanted to just stop for a second because Monica just rocked my world.
Ooh.
Because it's so good to hear someone say, oh yeah, you wrote that for your fans and that's good. Because in this world we live in with AI and everything, someone told me like the only frontier left is community, is this. So I loved hearing, and I love that you guys are putting out the author ecosystem Kickstarter. And I love hearing like, yes, there are projects that you will work on. There are things that you'll do, and they're meant to come to life, not because they're going to be the biggest and they're going to be at the top of the funnel. It's deeper, and you can do both in your career. I'm lucky I write pretty fast, and I'm co-writing with people like Ines, and she writes very fast, and I'm able to do all of this. But I think it's worth noting in your career, sometimes the projects you work on are for the people who want to go deeper.
Yeah, and like there's so much value. I mean, like as they become evangelists, there's like huge value to that too, right? Like like a donkey can still grow your audience. I mean, I think that's like, yeah. It doesn't
Donkeys
have to
still work.
A donkey, like,
right.
Yeah. We do have a couple of questions if we're okay to kind of move on to that. So one person asked, wouldn't it help the word of mouth sharing if people couldn't put down the book because of using the strategies? So like, I think
for your less popular books, for like
for like the weird books, like if you write a donkey or like a fan book as we'll call them now, the question is putting the page turner pacing methodology into one of those fan books still going to help with word of mouth, which I guess we just talked about.
Yeah, I think we just talked about that.
Yeah. Okay.
I was thinking about that. I was like, I can write a donkey book and put in all the pacing and amazing stuff. And if it just doesn't quite hit the market, again, it'll be a fan favorite. And it's great. And I think that there's always an opportunity to sharpen your skills. Like you write a book, it's not a flop. It's not a failure, even if it sells 0 copies, because you learn something and you take it with you. Just like, if they ban TikTok tomorrow, but you spent time becoming a storyteller on TikTok, you take that skill with you forever. So nothing is lost. But if you also combine the writing to market, writing to trend, or whatever you're able to do with the page turning, that book is just going to blow things out of the water. Yeah. So unfortunately, you're not just competing with people who are all writing donkey books. You're competing with people who are writing things to trend and those unicorn books and the workhorse books. And some of them are putting together some awesome page turner strategies and have more skill. But sometimes you have a lot of skill and you're just not writing an entertaining book, or you're writing an entertaining book that doesn't quite hit the market and it's just not going to get attention. And just recognize that.
Yeah. One other thing that I want to say is just your donkey books become bigger over time. Also, generally, like 10 years ago, when I wrote a book that was like very, very weird for people, like I made like it wouldn't even become profitable. But now, like when I write a donkey book, like I'm making $5,000 on it when I launch it on Kickstarter. It's just like those things also grow as like the unicorn books pull up the whole audience. And as the whole audience grows, your least successful book will do better than your most successful book earlier in your career.
That's a great point. Yeah. I mean, I know that, but like it's really great. It's so good to hear that. And I think like if you're here, like if you like Russell and me, like you probably like to write weird books. Like that's just probably where you're at. But I think it's really encouraging for people. The other question we have is, if we've taken your page turning, what? Wait, page turner pacing course. You've taken the course. Is that basically going to be the same info that's in the book on Kickstarter? Does the book have new and different things in it?
So something that I say in the course, and something that I say in the book, which nobody has only one person has in hand right now, is that I'm a trained teacher. So because I like learning, because I once upon a time wanted to be the next Sesame Workshop with the makers of Sesame Street, and I wanted to do with media, I went back to school and I got a teaching degree because I wanted to understand teaching. This is a different teaching style. It's the same information in a different teaching style. My first language is to show people how to do something. My second language is to tell them how to do something. I think there's more power in showing it than telling it. So I tell it to you in a completely different style method. If watching is your learning style, you're good. You're done. Go sit down and rewatch the course. If it's helpful to your brain to see the instructions, including a workbook, and whenever I'm doing nonfiction, I do better when I'm both reading it and also listening to it. It reinforces my brain. So I usually like to watch something happen and then I want to read it and listen to it at the same time. So that question really is all about your learning style. If you needed to have it in a different learning style than watching me do it, now you have it with me giving you explicit instructions on what to do.
Awesome. All right. I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What is the biggest missed opportunity that people are doing in pacing? Like, you're like, everyone knows this information, but like no one's actually doing it. And like, why are people not doing this very lucrative thing? Is there a thing you could think of like that?
There's a lot. Okay, I will. The number one thing, think about television. Think about what television has you do. Like I spent one semester barely in film school because when they put a lighting meter in my hand, and I was like, I have to create the light. The camera doesn't just capture the light. I was like, I'm out. Give me a TV camera again. But also, I don't like when stories end. Even though I read romance and I know it's going to end happily ever after, I know that there's more. You just don't have to tell it to me. I can imagine it. So I like series. Another reason that I like television is the episodic nature of it. So the story is ongoing. It doesn't just stop. And those are some more lessons that I learned in television. I call it the open door method, where you are either you are purposefully interweaving subplots, and then at the end, it's the sleeve. I'm not a fan of cliffhangers for this reason. People come to the page, I think a cliffhanger interrupts that experience. So what I think works best and why television doesn't get the same vitriol that a book with a cliffhanger gets is because television has multiple storylines. They usually come in with the A storyline. If it's a mystery, who done it? If it's a thriller, why do they do it? If it's a romance, are they gonna fall in love, right? So they will complete that story arc of the A line, who done it? They will answer that question. But then there's subplots that happened in the middle, usually interpersonal or intimate relationships or family relationships or friendships going on. And one of those subplots will rise to the fore after the A storyline has been completed. And now that subplot is the big thing. And they basically ask a new story question or present that as the big A line story, and they leave that dangling. It's not really a cliffhanger. It is, but it isn't, because the main cliffhanger got resolved. And this cliffhanger that's happening is not the main subplot. So you got all the feelings, all the yummy feelings that fiction gives you. And then that door gets wrenched open and they're like, I gotta go do this again next week, but with an exclamation point and not I gotta go do this again next week. Grr. That's the biggest thing, is that emotional payoff that episodic can give you, but also the money that it gives you, because people keep going. They pre-order. You put that cliffhanger, that open door at the end of your book, and then the next thing they're pre-ordering and they're pre-ordering. Or if the series is complete, they chain smoke the whole thing, and you can see it in your dashboard. That's what people are leaving on the table.
Have you ever heard of the Levitt's paradigm?
No, tell me.
I get to tell everyone something that comes from comics. I'm so excited. Okay, so Levitt's paradigm is how all comics work. Well, all good comic series work. The idea is exactly what you said. Every scene furthers one of, we're looking at this page. Every scene furthers one of the plots. And there's an A scene, a B scene, a C scene, a D scene, an E scene. Once A scene is resolved, so like every book, you can see like most of it will take place in the A story, and then some on the B, some on the D, some on the C, and usually like a D and an E story. And then when A story gets resolved, B story becomes A story, C story becomes B story, D story becomes B. There's a percentage of plot that each of these B and C and D and E stories should be taking in every book, so that by the time you get to book 5, the E story is the A story, but they've been following it little by little, which is the thing that you just said. But for people that need to have like some sort of quantifiable data-driven thing, like the Levitt's paradigm is how Alan Moore plotted a ton of books. It's how basically all comics work, and it's kind of like, it's not necessarily a formula, but it's like how to move your plot along and make sure you have enough meat so that by the time you get to, as Elena Johnson says, because there's a dip between book 7 and 9, that if you introduce the main character in book 7 and book 1, then like suddenly there's no dip because those people now have to know. So like it's kind of how you layer these things to work.
I've never seen a graph, but that is exactly what we were taught. And if you want to see this in action, Masterclass, Shonda Rhimes' Masterclass, she breaks it down, but she did not break it down like that. Like that is the most scientific I've ever seen this broken down.
Monica, look, if you got off mute to say something. You are now on mute, though.
Yes, I'm now taking notes instead of thinking about what I was going to say. That was way better than what I was going to say. Yeah, no, that sounds really great. And like, so one like little follow-up, I think the more we can start to intuit these patterns, the better. And I think a lot of people do intuit it, like going back to the plotter versus pantser. But I also think in a book, like in a television series or a movie, like these are like, you have to hit those like right on, where like in a book, it does seem like it is a little bit looser. And there's more room to play. But I will say, like, when I learned about story structure, I went through the Hunger Games, the Twilight series, and like it was like if there were 400 pages in that first book of Twilight, it was like page 200, where like that temple moment, that mid temple moment happened. So I think like as an author, like my philosophy has always been like, get as close as you can to it, but like I need the breathing room, like kind of similar to what Lee was talking about earlier. Like I need the breathing room and like the interest and the heart and all that stuff to be interested. But it is notable that like the closer and closer you get to it, and I wouldn't be surprised if you look at like Fourth Wing or something like, and it was like right in that center part, or so this stuff is real, and your success grows as you are able to execute it more perfectly, really, like similar to like gymnastics or whatever else. Of your series, Ines, which would you say follows that open door pattern the most?
Most of them, just because that's how I was trained. If you are a sweet, clean, and wholesome reader, you can look at my Brides of Purple Heart Ranch series. The first book is free, On His Bended Knee, and you will see exactly what I'm doing. Those books are short, but all of them do it. The book that I wrote for Lee's publishing company, her Vampire Prince, that does it. That is a trilogy with a fourth book. That is a bonus novella. That does it, but they all do it. I can't help myself. I don't understand how to write a single book.
Well, have any of you guys seen Man on the Inside? Okay, I'm going to kind of ruin the Man on the Inside just because I'm going to show you how to look for this. Like, it's really easy to see in a Netflix series because usually, and it's specifically like a mystery or thriller where like there's one thing to solve at the end of a series. Because like what happens is the mystery is not resolved for episode 8, but every episode they unlock a new mystery that is solved. Like a new piece of it is solved after every bit, so there is a satisfying resolution to be like, oh, cool. Like I had an open loop, I closed the loop, but the mystery continues on and that keeps me going. But I don't feel like I've been shafted because I got I came for this bit and the episode title said Mystery Man does a thing, and then the thing happened, the thing got resolved, and that led to me reading the next part of the mystery. That's what you're talking about, kind of, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Man on the Inside, or really any serial mystery thing, to me, like the mysteries are the easiest way to see this because like there is an overarching mystery. There are clues that have to happen. And so like you can do a mystery, like a cozy mystery especially, and see all of this stuff and then bring it to other genres.
If you think of it, like I think that television shows are the easiest way to study this. It's quick. They're very explicit. They're economical with their words. And I like to read scripts too. It doesn't take that much time. So if you look at any season, you'll see that there's an overarching season. I love teaching Buffy the Vampire Slayer. In the first season, the Hellmouth was going to open and she had to defeat the master. All of the episodes, and you can go on, I can never remember the website, but I have an author resources page on my ineswrites.com site, but there's a like a database, a warehouse of scripts that you can just download because they're just scripts. Scripts are a working document. But they have like all of the season of Buffy, and they show you how all the episodes led up to and interacted with this notion of the Hellmouth opening. I'm a huge Shonda Rhimes fan. If you look at Grey's Anatomy, it's the first year of the interns, or if it's Scandal, it's the first. It's the whole arc of what happened with the president and his mistress. They're all dealing with a complete story and the pieces that you get to further that main point along, while all of these story questions and interpersonal and intrapersonal relationships go on. That is a masterclass. Watching television pilots is truly a masterclass in story structure.
Yeah, and especially like a 2-hour, like a backdoor, like a pilot movie is also really good because they have to set up as if they're going to have a whole season while only setting up like the pilot part of it. So like backdoor pilot would be like a TV movie or something that like comes out for those who don't speak TV. And because like they have to put like they have to put enough meat on the bones of that
Like
backdoor
Battlestar
pilot.
Galactica.
Right, exactly. There has to be it has to work independently while also setting up for them getting a series order.
I'm learning a lot. I'm going to go watch TV. I mean, I think we instinctively know this, but I think trad books, they have to resolve. So you even think of trilogies, they have to get to resolution of some sort at the end. And I've noticed that, whereas being indie, I'm more free to cliff something really hard and not close most of the threads. And I'm writing a duet right now, and I'm, I finished book 1, and then I talked to a developmental editor and went back and changed it so that the emotional conflict is going to be still there into book 2. So I am not taking your advice. We'll see how it goes.
I feel like a duet is like a very specific thing. Like,
yes,
you know ahead of time that you are to buy these 2 books and it's a story. Like, so I feel like duet, okay. Like trilogy, you start to get into like, you know that the big story is going to be resolved over the trilogy, for sure. But like, I would be willing to have cliffhangers. But if it's like a a 6-book series, you know, unless it's a serial, that's where I'm kind of like, is it like standalones in a series? And then I think it's very important to just communicate with your audience at that point. Like if it is told in a serialized fashion, like I do think it's helpful for them to know that ahead of time so that they're not like, oh, I got to buy like 7, 10, but you know, like so it depends, I think. There is another question. Ines, do you have or talk about in your system a method for tracking and feeding in subplots?
I do. I tell people that it's the name of the book and the course is Patient or Pacing: How to Write a Binge-Worthy Novel in 21 Days. The 21 days is the clickbaity part of it. You write your book in 80 days, or if you write your book in 10 days, oh, all I care about is that you get the process. So in the process, I make you do certain things on certain days. I'm not a person that can write by word count because I'm very I compartmentalize. I'm very. Do you guys remember Amelia Bedelia? Do you remember those books? Or am I just really that old? Okay, Monica's nodding. But Amelia Bedelia, she took things so literal. So if you're telling me I need to write like 1,000 words, I'm going to break apart contractions and add a whole bunch of adverbs, which have nothing to do with the story because the focus is get the words. So my focus each day is I know that I am writing a particular scene or a particular beat or particular tropes plot point, right? So I have each day that you start to write a particular thing. Like I have you starting with this, you write the setup and I tell you everything that should be in the setup and you get to make your choices if you want to listen to me or not about what should be in the setup. Then I have you say, well, your character has a want or a need and I tell you what those are and I give you guidelines and guideposts. And then I say, well, if somebody has a goal, which is the want or the need, they have to make a plan. So they make a plan and they take a step. The character might not even know the full plan. That's okay. You as the writer, you need to know the plan because you're about to throw something in their way, which is the obstacle. So I'm giving you each day, I'm talking to you about one particular thing that you need to hit and the goal and the parameters of that particular scene. And then I have days that I call tweener days. And on the tweener days, I'm talking to you about things that deal with your particular subgenre, things that deal with your particular trope. So not when I say particular, I don't mean I'm talking about every single solitary trope and every single solitary subcategory that's out there. If you are writing the only one bed, you need to know that. And I'm going to ask you, well, what are the obligatory scenes of your particular trope or your particular subgenre? Is that there in what you did or in what you're about to do? Let's take this day and let's make sure that we hit that. And in one of these tweener days, these in-between days, I specifically talk about subplots. And I talk to you about, hey, you have an A story. And that A story, the way that I think it makes the most sense is the A story has a story question. You have to answer that story question by the end of the book. That has to get a resolution. Positive, negative, happy or not. That needs to be resolved. But then your subplots are probably going to deal with either the theme of your book, like courage or revenge or love conquers all, whatever theme that you're writing about. If not, like if you're like me and you're always writing about romance and love conquers all, then your theme is like your subplots or your story question is probably going to stem from that goal. What is the goal of the character? They want to get the popular guy and they're going to get a makeover. Well, what about more interpersonal relationships? Like what's going on with that heroine's mom as the heroine is trying to change herself? What's going on with the heroine's best friend? Maybe they have a subplot going on there. What's going on with the object of her desire? Maybe they have a subplot. So the subplots need to be dancing around that main story question. And you're going to ask the questions about that subplot as well to weave it in so that it's either going parallel, maybe it's going perpendicular where it just bumps into it, or maybe it kind of zigs a little bit, but you want it to have some kind of interaction with the main plot or the main story. So I do talk to you about that. And then I catch you up again, because I noticed that you said that you're a pantser, but I catch you up again because I'll ask you again as we get closer to the end, hey, you had a subplot. Are you still weaving that in? Is that still going? Now's about the time to decide, are you going to resolve it? Are you going to answer the questions in here, or will this be resolved in the next book? And then you need to prepare us. So it's really me being my maternal self and nagging you and guiding you through the book day by day. Even if it takes you 3 days to do day one, it's up to you. I'm not nagging you that hard, but I do want you to see there's a process to what you're doing, whether you want to outline your book or not. There's a structure, and I'm just guiding you along the structure.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. We are so a pantser is someone who writes without an outline. Someone asked what a pantser is. A plotter is someone who plots and then writes. So I love it. We're nearing the end of it. I do want to say, if you want to see this really, like how that action beats and such works, one of the best examples is Hitman. You know that Netflix movie Hitman? Because Hitman is not watch any other mafia movie and then watch Hitman. Hitman is not a mafia movie. It's not a thriller. It's a romantic comedy. And like the minute that you see, you're like, oh, this changes every single beat in like what you should expect. My wife, we finished the movie and my wife's like, how did they get together at the end? And I'm like, because it's a romance. Like if it was a thriller, they'd both be dead at the end. But like they had to like the minute that they show at the very beginning, that first scene, he puts a bunch of romance covers on the screen. Like within the first 3 minutes, you're like, okay, this is a romantic comedy. But like I think it's a very effective way to show like how to pull in. You were talking about like pulling down beats, pulling down structures, pulling down the things you need for a story. And like all of the vitriol that I see online about that movie is people that didn't know it was romantic comedy. The minute that you do, you're like, I mean, duh. Like they're not going to murder the main characters in a romantic comedy, guys. All right. So we have done a lovely hour with you, Ines. I'd love for you to give us like one final hit goodbye and where we could get it, unless Lee or Monica have something final. You guys, ladies, have any final words? No, they're just shaking their head. So Ines, if you want to give us your like best parting tips, where we can find you, I will once again plug, go buy the book. Like go buy the book. Maybe buy our ecosystems book too. But like definitely buy the page turner pacing book. So I'm gonna leave you for the last words.
Sure. So I just don't want people to be afraid of structure. Structure is our friend. Structure is why our stories work. And you don't have to, pantsers, you don't have to do an outline. I often don't do an outline, but I know the plotting points. And I just wake up every morning. I look at where I am in the manuscript. I'm like, oh, I'm at this particular pacing point, or I'm at this part in the trope. And that's what I write. So I'm kind of a pantser. But because I know the structure, I don't get lost. I don't get writer's block. I get tons of writers, I'm tired. I get tons of writers, I want the story to go this way, but I know I'm wrong. I get tons of, I know I'm being lazy and this isn't the best way to execute the scene. I get tons of that, but I don't get the block because I trust the structures that people have broken down. I trust the patterns that I've seen myself, and that makes me stronger. Writing according to these guidelines makes me stronger. Looking for them in other people's books, looking for them when I sit down on the couch and watch and relax by watching television or watching movies. This just makes me stronger. This is how I feel that we build the muscles for our muses to do this stuff. Because so many people say, well, I just intuitively do that. What if you did it purposefully? What if you did it intentionally? Imagine how much stronger, how much quicker, how your brain is like, oh, I know what's going on. And then you get to that part in your story that you're pantsing and your brain's like, I know what to do next. I know how to figure this out. They did this and that, but let's subvert it. Let's change that. And because you understand and you've seen it done so many times, you can subvert it because you see what the rules are. And then you take people like beyond where they thought they could go with how you interpreted that formula. So if you want to hang with me, you can buy the book, the audiobook. I have a webinar where I'm going to break down the process. I have a full-blown course where you can look over my shoulders as I do this. And then I have cohorts where you can do it with other people. And I have a very few select one-on-ones where I will nag you in person, not in person, but one-on-one over a Zoom call and make sure you are getting your stuff done. So all these are available only on the Kickstarter, which the link is in the chat, or you can just go to ineswrites.com/Kickstarter to check it out.
Awesome. And if you've never been nagged by Ines, you're in for a treat. Please do. Finally, we are exactly 2 months out from our conference, Writer MBA. Look at how I did that. So if you have been thinking about it, you should definitely join us. Monica's going to be there. Lee's going to be there. Ines gets a side eye. But like we have the mastermind starts 2 months from today. So head on over to Writer MBA. If you liked hanging out with us here, you're definitely going to like hanging out with us in New Orleans. We have a ton of great guests that we're going to announce. So writermba.com. Otherwise, I did it, Monica. I thought I was going to forget, but I did it. Yay. All right. On that note, have a great day, everyone.
Thanks for listening. For more, head on over to sixfigureauthorexperiment.com for archive access, resources, and more. We'll see you next time.